Hello and welcome to Big Foodie Geek. I hope you are well. Now, a little while ago on Instagram and TikTok, I asked this.
I need you to help me with a new Big Foodie Geek video. I bought this book 2 years ago in an attempt to try and get better with like pastries and French Patisserie and stuff like that. And I still haven't done anything from this book. I have done none of the recipes at all. So what I want from you is to give me a couple of numbers between 76 and 646, because that's where the recipes lie within this book. And when I have a good amount of those numbers, I will pick out one at random and I will do that recipe no matter what it is, no matter how complicated it is. I will do it on a video and see if I can do it, or fail horribly. That will also be entertaining, but I'm going to see if I can do it. So I want you to pick out the recipe that I'm going to do. I'm going to have no idea what it is until I get that number and find the actual page. So help me out.
So yeah, basically I asked you to pick out the recipe that I'm going to be making from that hefty cookbook, and it's time to find out what recipe we're going to be making, because I have no idea, but I want this to be completely fair. So I am going to pick out a number at random. I'm going to use a little tool off the internet to pick one out. So let's do that right now. So essentially I set up this spinny wheel with all of the potential page numbers in it, and I'm gonna hit the play button on this and it will pick me out a page number at random. So this is gonna be completely fair. I am doing it at random and we can find out what our recipe is gonna be. So let's not delay the inevitable. Let's find out what that page number is gonna be. Let's find out what that recipe is gonna be. Right, here we go. Let's pick one out. What's it gonna be? I hope it's gonna be kind to me. Really do. What we got? 158. 158 with a little fanfare there. 158. Let's look in the book and find out what that is. Wow, that is hefty. Right, 158, 158. Oh wow, there we go. Literally opened it up on the right page. Raisin swirls. Okay, well, that could have been worse. That could have been a lot worse, actually. Raisin swirls. So raisin swirls, on the face of it, that doesn't sound too bad. However, look at these. Those are some really, really nice looking raisin swirls. And we aren't just like going to be getting some pastry, buying it from the shop. We are going to be making proper croissant dough from this book as well. So that's on page 152. And the pastry cream as well. What the heck is a pastry cream? I'm gonna have to make that as well. So I'm going to basically be making this croissant dough recipe first, but I'm also gonna be making that pastry cream, page 196. Where's that? Well, after page 195 and before page 197, I guess. Pastry cream, the heck is that? So this isn't gonna be as simple as just like making raisin swirls. No, there's gonna be all sorts of like fancy techniques in this. So I am going to have to really up my game. So no pressure at all. And hey, if these go well, maybe I'll try something else, because I think this is a good starting point for me. But if I balls these up, then there's no hope for me. So there we are, we know what I'm going to be making from this. I'm going to need to go buy some ingredients and then we can see how I get on. So, wish me luck.
2 weeks later.
Right, it's a new day. Yes, it is. I have all my ingredients in which to make my raisin swirls. One quick bit of transparency. As you saw, this starts off by making a croissant dough. Now, I have made croissants in a one-day baking class, so I kind of know what I'm doing with croissant dough. But that was probably over 10 years ago, so it's been a while. But I've got a vague idea of how to make croissants because I have made them before. So we'll see if it helps, but it really may not because it has been a long time. Anyway, I'm really keen to get started with these because they are going to take a bit, as with all enriched doughs do. So let's get started with these raisin swirls from this fancy French patisserie book and see how I get on. So the raisin swirls recipe starts off with that croissant dough already made. So we are going to have to skip back to this section to make the croissant dough. So I have gathered the ingredients with which to make the croissant dough, and here they are. Croissant ingredients. That is everything for that croissant dough recipe, except I've had to make one change. So right here it says 10 grams of fresh yeast. Fresh yeast is lovely. I don't have any. You have to buy it in bulk and it's only got a limited life in the fridge, and I may not get through it all. So I'm using the dried easy bake yeast. So I've had to scale down the amount of yeast that I'm using. 10 grams of fresh yeast equates to about 3 grams of the quick easy bake yeast. So I've had to change that out. Otherwise that should be everything. There's the plain flour, strong bread flour, sugar, salt, butter, more butter, whole milk, which I've actually made a little bit tepid in the microwave because the yeast will prefer the warm milk, a little bit of honey, and the yeast. If you're wondering why there's two types of butter, well, it says here 50 grams of butter and then 125 grams of butter, preferably with 84% butterfat content, so better butter really. This one's going into the dough, and this is the one that's going to be spread between to create the layers of butter in our dough. So this needs to be really, really nice butter, which this is. It's fancy French butter. It is probably almost twice as much as this butter right here. I think this was probably about £2 a pack. This was about £4 a pack. But it's very, very nice butter, and that's what I'm going to use between the layers. That's just going into the dough, so it doesn't have to be as nice. So there's my ingredients. Let's get on with the recipe. First of all, whisk the yeast and milk together in a bowl of the stand mixer. So in goes our milk and our yeast. Again, this step would be assuming you're using fresh yeast, but I'm just still going to do it exactly as it says. Next, it says add the remaining ingredients except the 84% fat butter, like I said, which is incorporated later. So the plain flour, bread flour, salt, sugar, honey, yes dear, God I'm so lonely, and the not fancy butter. And fit the mixer with the dough hook. On with the dough hook, you need it at a low speed for 4 minutes. I'm going to go as pretty much as low as it can go. So that's come together pretty well on that low speed for 4 minutes, and then a medium speed for 6 minutes. There we go, that's been 6 minutes. Next, shape the dough, which should now be elastic, into a ball and cover with plastic wrap. Let rise for 30 minutes, depending on the room temperature. It is warm today, not too warm, even though it's the end of July. Oh yeah, that is a really, really nice dough to handle. Very, very nice. Cover it with plastic and leave for 30 minutes. While the croissant dough is proving, let's go back to our raisin swirls recipe quickly. So as well as the croissant dough, it also starts off with a pastry cream as well. So I thought let's make that while the dough is proving, because it's going to need time to cool down. So if we head over to page 196, here's the pastry cream recipe, aka creme pâtissière. So we're going to need even more ingredients. There we go. So this is probably going to make more than I need, but I can always pop it in the fridge and have it another time because it's essentially custard. So we've got more whole milk, 500 mils this time. We've got plain flour, corn flour, 25 grams of each. We've got more butter, 50 grams worth. We've got what should be vanilla bean seeds. I didn't buy vanilla beans because they're expensive. Vanilla beans, in this economy, and I already had vanilla bean extract, so I'm going to use that instead because there's no point in me buying stuff that I don't need to. So I've put about a teaspoon's worth in there because I think that will equate to about a pod of vanilla bean. And we also need roughly 100 grams of eggs, that's about 2 eggs. These are nice Burford brown eggs. See, look at that lovely orange colour. So let's get on with making our creme pat, shall we? I almost forgot the sugar, I left it on the side. There's 100 grams of caster sugar as well. So we need to start off by combining the milk and half of the sugar in a saucepan and scrape in the vanilla bean seeds and bring to a boil over a medium heat. So I've got my milk over a medium heat, in goes half the sugar and scrape in that vanilla. Give that a quick stir together. So while that's coming up to a boil, we whisk in the egg and the remaining sugar in a mixing bowl until blended and slightly thickened. There's my eggs, I'm just going to beat those first. Just get rid of any of the stubborn white, and the other half of our sugar goes in. Off we go. Let's get that slightly thickened. I'm also trying to keep an eye on my milk as well to stop it from scalding and sticking to the bottom of the pan. Next, we sift the cornstarch and flour into the egg mixture and whisk until combined. Corn flour. Sifted, and let's whisk that in. Right, that is combined and looks quite nice and thick. As soon as the milk comes to a boil, slowly pour it onto the egg and starch mixture, whisking constantly. This will loosen the mixture and heat it a little. Right, my milk's just come up to a boil. You can't see it because of the steam, but it has. So I need to get it into here, but I'm actually going to put it through my sieve a little bit at a time, just in case any sort of like skin or horrible bits from the bottom have gone in. That will catch them. Whisk in a bit at a time. Wasn't too bad actually, not too much horrible bits. And this goes back into our saucepan. And I've got to bring it back up to a boil over this medium heat, whisking vigorously. And when it comes up to the boil, I've got to continue whisking for 2 to 3 minutes. Well, that has thickened up, so I think I'm going to take that off the heat. Then I go with my butter, stir that in until smooth. That looks pretty nice and smooth to me. It's very, very hot in here now. It says to cool the pastry cream quickly, line a baking sheet with plastic wrap and spread the cream over it. I'm not going to do that because I'm hoping this will be cool by the time we need it. I've just transferred that out of my metal saucepan into a plastic bowl because it should cool down better then. The metal will retain the heat and it might end up cooking still. So essentially I want to try and stop the cooking process. Just going to pop some cling film over the top to stop her skin from forming, and that can cool down while we work on our dough. Speaking of which, here is our dough. It doesn't look super risen, but it's not a great amount of dough. So let's take it out. It does feel pretty nice, gotta say that. Next it says to flatten the dough to burst any air bubbles trapped inside. Place on a baking sheet and freeze for 30 to 40 minutes until very well chilled. So let's flatten my dough. Okay, that's flattened out on a baking sheet. So that's going to go into the freezer for 30 minutes because it's going into the really cold part of my freezer. So I'd say 30 minutes max. Then while that's chilling, with a rolling pin, flatten the 84% fat butter into a square and place on the chilled dough. So obviously that step is when that dough comes out. Let's get our butter into a square. So I'm going to do that between 2 sheets of baking paper to stop it from sticking and getting all over my work surface. Just going to bash it down first to start off with. Then I can start to roll it out a bit. It's probably not going to be a perfect square. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. I think that'll do. I'm going to pop that in the fridge just to keep it chilled until our dough comes out. So I can keep it wrapped in that until later. Right, that's had 20 minutes in the freezer and I think that's perfectly enough because you can hear that. That is definitely chilled. Any more than that, it would be hard as rock. Next we need to fold the dough over to enclose the butter and fold in the edges, sealing them well. So essentially creating an envelope of butter. I'm just going to lay down a little flour just to help stop the stickage. Right, I'm going to need to roll that out a bit to get that into the centre. Let's see if we can get that folded within. I think that should be enough. Seal that all up, make sure it's well in there. Next, here's where it gets a bit complicated. Roll the dough into a 10 by 24 inch, 25 by 60 centimetre rectangle. I need to be accurate, so I've got my tape measure out. So 24 inch, that's pretty big. And my battery's about to run out, so I'm going to change that over very quickly. I realised while I was changing the battery on my camera, I can lift this tripod up a bit more. We've now got a bit more view, so we can actually see what I'm rolling out. You can get this rolled out to 10 by 24 inches. Right, how are we doing? A little bit more to get to 10 inches. And it's really going to need rolling out this way to get to 24 inches. Good grief, there's still a long way to go to 24 inches.
That's what she said.
And I'm a bit worried because I can see some butter creeping through here. But we keep going. Right, that's not quite 24 inches. I'll let you make the joke this time. But I'm kind of worried about the integrity of the dough because the butter is creeping out over here and here a bit, because typically, thanks to the British weather, it's getting quite warm now. It's kind of roughly the right sort of size, so we'll quit while we're sort of ahead. Then we need to make a double turn and then a single turn. This is where we need to know what these methods are. It says here, see techniques, page 69. Nice. Step 10. And page 70 to 71, step 4 to 6. This is basically instructions for a single turn. Giving it in pictures doesn't really help much, so thankfully I do know what this method is. Likewise for the double turn here, it's not very clear from the pictures. But again, thankfully I know what these steps are. So it said first, do a double turn. So a double turn is essentially folding it into 4, so 1 and 1, so essentially like you're right down the middle. You've got a seam right down the middle there, almost like a book. It might sometimes be called a book fold. Don't quote me on it. And then you fold that in half like that. So that's kind of like your first fold there. And then it says to do a single turn. And basically what that is, you fold that over like that, and you fold that over like that onto itself. So that is a single turn, I hope. I could be wrong. It's been a while. It has been a while. But that I'm going to wrap in baking paper and chill for 30 minutes. Okay, this has been chilling for 30 minutes, so we can now actually get on with the raisin swirls part of the recipe rather than the other 2 parts of the recipe, which were on completely separate pages and recipes in themselves. So it says here, soak the raisins briefly in boiling water and drain. It also says, if you wish, macerate them in a little rum with candied orange peel and cinnamon. Well, I don't drink, so I wasn't going to use rum, but I did macerate them in some boiling water with a little bit of vanilla extract in there as well, just to give them some flavour. So I'm going to drain these off. So I'm just going to leave those to drain on some kitchen towel so I don't put soggy raisins onto my dough. Right, now I've got to roll my dough into an 8x16 inch rectangle and then spread my pastry cream over it. Pop down my dough, put over some flour, and then we want 8x16. So definitely not as big as last time.
That's what she said. Oh, no, 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 not.
I'm getting some stickage again from the butter, which I am not thrilled about. How on earth they keep it such a perfect rectangle in those pictures, I have no idea. Okay, that's 8 by roughly 16. It's not a perfect rectangle, but I'm an imperfect person, so it will do. It will do. So I need to put 120 grams of my creme pat onto this, which looks pretty nice, I must say. Let's spread that over with a palette knife. And then I need to just spread my raisins over here, try and make it fairly even. And I've got to brush that border with an egg wash as well. So it said the egg wash was 1 egg and 25 mils of milk, so that's exactly what I've done. So mentally I've been kind of kicking myself that this hasn't been coming out perfectly. But what I've got to realise is this is my first time making raisin swirls. Not just raisin swirls, but like high quality raisin swirls using a method which is supposed to be like, you know, top end patisserie stuff. And that ain't gonna get right on your first go. Even if I have like made croissants before, I've only made them once for Christ's sake. So I'm trying to rein in my expectations. As long as I get some nice raisin swirls out of this, that's a good job. So I've got to carefully roll up the filling widthways with the filling inside. I'm going to try and make this as tight as possible. That's what she said. So I get some nice swirls, and hopefully with those layers from our dough, it will give us some nice swirls. That doesn't look too bad actually, that looks like a nice log. And I've got to brush this roll with the egg wash. Then I've got to cut this into about 2 centimetre slices, about 8 to 10 equal swirls apparently. So what I'm going to just do is just cut off the very end bits, which are not real, and this end as well, not my fingers. So I did manage to get 8 out of that. I did have another off cut at the end, which I didn't bother with. Then they need to go onto a non-stick baking sheet with pastry joint underneath so the swirls don't unwind as they bake. I'm not risking these sticking, so I'm putting down some baking paper onto my baking sheet. In the end, I went with 2 trays. The reason being is because these trays aren't that big, and if these expand out, all crammed onto one tray and get stuck together, then that's game over. Then the last step before baking, these go into a cool oven with a bowl of boiling water under it, which you can see right there, and we let them have an hour to prove. And that gives me time to clear up all this mess. Okay, these have had roughly an hour in the cool oven. So now I have put the oven up to 180 degrees C, and these can finally go in the oven. This has taken a long time, but hopefully they'll be worth it. 10 to 12 minutes, let's see how they come out. Okay, it's been a little bit longer than it said in the book. I've probably given them more like 16, 17 minutes just because I was keeping an eye on the colour. But look at those. Those look pretty dang good. Those actually came out a lot better than I anticipated. But look, those have got swirls. Those are raisin swirls, look at them. They actually look good. After the trouble I was having with the pastry when I was rolling it out, I was worried about them. But they've come out a lot better than I anticipated, they really have. So I'm going to leave them to cool, and then I'll give one a try and see how it tastes. But I'm pleased with those, I'm very pleased with how they come out. Don't know how. Hey, apparently recipes work. There you go, 1 raisin swirl, the recipe you picked for me, and I did it. I did it in the end. I was a bit worried there when I was making the dough because the butter was coming through. I thought, oh my God, it's not going to work. It's going to turn out terribly. But in the end, at least appearance-wise, because we still got to taste it, it looks good. It's got the swirls on the back as well. It's got the raisins. It's a nice colour. They smell great when they were baking. Battery's running out. So all in all, looks-wise, I'm pretty pleased. But the proof with any of these things is always in the tasting. So let's give it a taste. Let me see how this has come out. Whew, cheers. It's been a journey. Yeah, that is good. That is very, very nice. Don't know if you can see there, but it's baked nicely all the way through. Tastes really nice. It's got that creme pat in there. The raisins obviously, and it's obviously really nice and buttery. It is really nice. It's flaky, you might have heard the crunch there. It is really good. They are not perfect by any means, but for a first go on these, I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, I made part of the recipe before when I did croissants like 10 years ago, but come on, that was 10 years ago. So yeah, I'm happy with it. I am very happy with it. And I think I would definitely like to go back and give them another try without filming, because obviously when I'm filming, I've got to keep an eye on the camera and everything else and trying to do the recipe and that. So I'm pretty pleased. I keep saying it, but I am. I think if I was going to try and do those again, I would probably try and do it perhaps when it was a bit cooler, or just try and manage it a bit better so that everything stayed a bit cooler, like the butter, the dough, all of that. I think that's why some of the butter was coming through. It was starting to get warm and it was just not maintaining its like structure. But this is all stuff you pick up as you make these things time and time again. But for something that I didn't know that I was going to be making at the start of this video, I am still very, very happy. Hopefully you are too, because you are the ones who picked it out for me. So how do you think I did? Do you think I did all right? Have you made these before? What would you do better? Was the recipe any good? There's a proper French Patisserie book, but were there any things in there that you might think it should be done differently? I've done it differently. Anyway, I want to go off and finish my raisin swirl, so let me know if you think I should try this again, whether I should try something out of there that I've picked, or whether I should let you pick another one, because that went well, and I want to try it again. I want to try something out of there and see if I can do those again, because it's a way of me getting better and showing you that these things are perfectly possible at home. But I do hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it entertaining. If you did, then obviously like the video, subscribe to the channel. If you want to try and get in on more of these kinds of things, a bit of interactive stuff, then keep an eye out on Instagram and TikTok. Go follow me on those as well. And otherwise, I'm going to head off, finish my raisin swirls, and I will see you next time on Big Foodie Geek. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.